So, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the third edition of our annual STEM Symposium to celebrate the National Science Day, STEMxplore 2024. Over the next 40 or 45 minutes, we're going to delve into a topic that I'm sure is on the top of the mind of every parent and educator. How do we help our children to prepare for the rapidly evolving careers in STEM? Hi, I'm Dr. Sonali Dasgupta, founder of STEMonsters, and I welcome you all to this exciting panel discussion on careers in STEM beyond traditional engineering and medicine. We are honored to have with us today three distinguished guests who have made remarkable contributions in their domains and are dedicating this time today for us to share their valuable insights. A very warm welcome to you all.
Thank you.
So we have with us today Ms. Geetha Adinarayan, an IBM Distinguished Engineer, CTO, Product Engineering, APAC region. Geetha is a technical leader with 20 years of industry experience and 7 patents to her credit. Her expertise includes IoT, AI, performance engineering, enterprise architecture, and solving customer crisis. So welcome, Geetha, for today's discussion.
Thank you, Sonali.
Mr. Shyam Krishnamurthy is the founder of an incredible platform called the Interview Portal, a unique platform that showcases the career journeys of hundreds of professionals who dared to follow their passions against conventional norms. I'm actually proud to be on one of those pages over there. So thank you, Shyam, for that. Prior to this, Shyam has over 20 years of experience working with technology-based product firms, particularly startups. Welcome, Shyam.
Thank you.
Next, we have Dr. Shivananda Koteshwar. He is the EDA group site leader and R&D head at Synopsys India. He wears multiple hats as well. He's a mentor and startup advisor with Atal Innovation Mission, Government of India, startup mentor in the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, and IT Skill Development Working Group member. He's also a professor of practice at Cambridge Institute of Technology and adjunct professor in Dayanand Sagar University and ISBR. Welcome, Dr. Shivananda.
Thank you.
So let me start off with Geetha. And for all the viewers over here, we will have a very informal kind of format where we'll try to learn from the career journeys of our distinguished guest members. If we have time at the end of it, we may be taking maybe 1 or 2 questions from the audience over here. So let's get started. I'll actually want to start with you, Geetha. So can you briefly walk me through your journey, let's say from after high school? What was that one defining experience, maybe a couple of decades ago, that sparked your interest in STEM, and today you're working in something as cutting edge as AI? So would you walk us through your journey and interest?
Definitely. It kind of also makes me go back in time and, relive some of those moments. To be honest, right, when I started my work or when I finished my education and started looking for work, there was nothing like, I want to be here, I want to be there. So in those days, it was natural. You finished your 10th and you did your higher education. And my ambition was to get into the industry as quickly as possible. So as I got into the industry, I started doing what was kind of, coming my way. But one defining moment in that journey was when I was doing the role of performance engineer. So what did this involve? So I would be called into a room full of engineers who would be figuring out why this net banking transaction did not work, which led to a crit sit. And, you will have to find out what is the problem. And everybody will be pointing fingers at each other and saying, no, this is not application. This is not database. This is not middleware. This is not operating system, right? Now you're in the middle of people and technology, and you will have to put on your performance engineering hat, find out which layer is causing the problem. And this was like finding the needle in the haystack. And that's where data became a key critical part in solving the puzzle. So what I would do, I would go through pretty much all the traces, heap dumps, the monitoring parameters from CPU utilization to, number of threads spawned to DB connections to all of that. And that kind of made me realize how much I loved data, how much data related work I loved. So I would go find small Perl programs, which would tie data together, find out, oh, okay, here is the connection leak that is causing this problem. And it also kind of made me realize how you can be a situational leader in bringing all the people together. And that was the time I said, Geetha, you love data. Start doing
Oh,
work with data, learn this field. And that I am glad, that revelation happened.
I mean, that's fascinating because it's so true, right? When we are even in high school, it's not necessary that we really know what
Yeah.
we want to do later. And the interest kind of evolves as we start getting thrown into the middle of everything. And slowly we start realizing what actually pulls us through and makes us go through the whole stress of the job. So you figured it out when you actually started your job, right? And during maybe the first few years in your job, you figured out where you wanted to work in. That brings me to actually Dr. Shivananda, to you. You had a BTech in electronics and engineering, right? Electronics engineering. And then you pursued a PhD in management. I mean, that is such an intriguing transition. So how did that journey happen?
So hi, first of all, thank you for inviting me for this. Wonderful, because I did see the panelists here. Very nice to meet all of you. As you rightly said, I started my journey as an engineer mainly because I was good in maths, and those days the only option you had was engineering. So I did engineering. I did fairly well in my engineering, and after that I joined semiconductor industry without even realizing what semiconductors was those days. The only reason I picked up semiconductors was because I liked electronics. And those days, there were very few job opportunities beyond programming and validation engineers and other things. So the only option I had was semiconductors. Very few companies, but I was very, very lucky to join one of the very good companies back then called Arcus Technologies. My entire career I owe to that company and the mentors and managers I had over there. So I started my journey in semiconductors, and I continued, being an engineer for a long time. I progressed in my career. As many of the senior people in this panel agree, you start realizing how much less you know, right? You start off with, you know everything, and you realize within 5 years, 10 years, you don't know anything. You're just at the surface of something called as technology. And I always had a passion for education. So I used to teach as early as I remember, even from 7th grade. I used to teach my friends. 10th standard, I think I pretty much had a full class. Engineering also, I used to teach not just electronics, but other subjects also to my friends. So I always liked teaching. But after putting in so many years of experience in semiconductors, and I loved my job. It was something which I really liked doing every morning till date. I love to get up in the morning and do what I'm doing right now. So there's absolutely no reason why I would quit semiconductors and get into something else. So I was looking for something to do in parallel. And all my companies I worked for, whether it's Intel, whether it's a MediaTek, whether it's Synopsys, gave me permission to engage with the universities. And that's how I started my journey with education. So I started teaching in many different colleges in Bangalore, Tamil Nadu, and Andhra Pradesh. I started with full courses, and then constraints of time, I started doing guest lectures. And recently now I actually talk about address the gaps which is there in the syllabus and what is required in the industries. So that has been my journey. And more I started working, I realized that without a PhD, it's very difficult to get into some of these courses because of the ACT requirements. So that's when I started, okay, why shouldn't I get a PhD degree? I had done my master's while I was working for Intel in OGI, which is Oregon Graduate Institute in US. So I had my master's in VLSI, but I didn't have the required degree to be called as a professor in educational world, right? So that's when I started my journey of PhD. And what was interesting was I wanted to do a technical PhD. So I did go to IISc and I was shortlisted for the program. And I still remember the interview. They asked me like 10 questions on statistics. I never expected that. I actually thought they're going to, ask me a lot of questions on the topic I had chosen or on semiconductors. But all the questions were on statistics. And I was not good at it. I was not prepared. So I didn't crack it. I didn't crack the examination. So the option I had was VTU, Vishweshwara Technical Institute, and the university and Bangalore University. So I applied in both without realizing which one I'll get. I was selected in both. And VTU, as you know, has a prerequisite of 4 subjects you need to write. And these are, you get 2 attempts, you get 1 year. So pretty much, if you plan it well, you can write this exam only once and clear it. Again, I was not very, very sure of clearing it, mainly because these are MTech subjects, right? Technical, deep subjects. where I applied to both. So I was selected in Bangalore University for management PhD. I was selected in VTU for engineering PhD. So I had actually picked up a topic in drone technologies in VTU and education management, mainly because that's something which I really like to do, and I was already doing it. So that's how I got into two PhDs. Both I got selected, but unfortunately the timings was always a mess. I cleared VTU. By that time I had gone way ahead in Bangalore University. So at some point I had to drop one of them. So I did drop VTU because I was very close with my PhD in management. So I completed my management and degree in the Bangalore University, and I got my PhD. And just for people who hear students, young students, and others, I was one of those students who never thought I'll study beyond my engineering. I thought, this is it. This is it. And till date, I've not stopped studying. Mainly because, as I told you, you start realizing how less you know, right? And I felt the only way to gain knowledge or skills is either through experience or, study in a good college with the good peers. And the only reason I picked up the top universities, whether it was my, management program in IIM or my PG certification courses, which I did in innovation and design thinking in MIT Sloan, Columbia, and Tuck University, collaboration, multiple certification courses I've done in Columbia, MIT, is mainly because peer group, right? So when I wanted to learn AI, I thought, okay, the best way to do it is, there was a course from IIT Mumbai, IIT Bombay, and I said, okay, this is the best way to get the certificate. Of course, the certificate has a value, but more than that, it's a peer group which matters. Today, I wanted to go a little bit deeper in AI because I lead a big team on AI. So there was a course in ISB on leadership in AI. So right now I'm doing that PG course.
Wonderful.
So this has been my journey of studies. Many of my friends don't believe that, why am I studying so much? And I always tell people it's not about the degree. It's the amount of knowledge you can gain by learning and by being a part of this entire system. So I've been fortunate enough to do that. So that's been my education journey so far.
Fascinating, fascinating. I think I'm already picking up an underlying theme here of continue to learn. Just don't stop. Don't think you've got your degree and you are done with it, because you never know what course your life will take. And from what you study to what you end up doing in your career doesn't necessarily have to be in a straight line. It's always a non-linear
I think
thing.
in the last 10 years, one line to summarize this, we all have the learning ability. That's the first thing you need to learn. But I think what's more important is learning agility. As long as you can get that, I think we are all set.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that,
Thank you,
Dr. Shivananda. So Shyam, I'll come to you. You've interviewed like hundreds of people now. Have you crossed thousands? Thousands. Okay. So he's interviewed thousands of professionals who have taken unconventional career paths, right? And your career path itself was quite fascinating. I mean, you come from a hardcore tech background, and then you started this venture where you are trying to uncover the stories of people who have taken on unconventional professional paths. So what actually inspired you to step away from the startup and the tech-driven world and take this mission as your life mission to share the story of how careers can be completely non-linear?
Yeah. There are some things in my LinkedIn profile that I cannot say. I cannot say that are personal, but that's one reason, because my dad, he did his MTech in aeronautical engineering in 1971 from IISc Bangalore, 1971. And he worked at DRDL. So he was reporting to Abdul Kalam for about 6 months in DRDL.
Wow.
So I grew up in a very, very military environment, talking about missiles. So, there's a general perception that's to us. People like me have it very easy because, your father's an engineer in 1970s. So I grew up very, very complacent that, I'm in good hands. Unlike, So when I asked my dad, he told me, he's an engineer, but at that time he felt mechanical doesn't have much scope. Electronics is coming up in 91, take electronics. So I wrote the exam in Hyderabad, got into electronics, and in 95 in the campus interview, I got Tata Telecom through campus. But he told me IT is a huge thing, but he knew it. He knew that IT is a huge thing. He said, I saw some cutouts in papers. There's some companies, you should apply for that, because software. At that time, software used to be the big thing, 95.
No, even now, I think in Bangalore, come on, IT bug.
No Infosys, nothing. So I said, I believed him, and I mean, he's my mentor, right? So I took it and I got a direct placement in the US in Hartford. 96, at the age of 21, I landed in John F. Kennedy Airport on a December 96, and I spent 8 years in US. But till then, I didn't have any. I was a very happy kid. Nothing in my mind. Though all my friends did their MS in proper electronics engineering, I went for software. I worked, but 2 years down, I had no work. But I was getting a good salary in an insurance company, well paid in Hartford, Connecticut, 96. 2 years later, I got that wake up call. No, I cannot do this because if I come back, I'll struggle. I took GMAT. I did well and I got into NYU. I did my MBA at NYU. I was doing my MBA at NYU when the World Trade Center bombing happened. I saw the bombing in front of my eyes. I saw the two towers falling because my office was in Mackenzie on 22nd floor and the bombing happened 2 kilometers from there, West 4th Street. I can't remember. I can't forget that day. So my father was calling me day in, day out. How are you going to manage your loan, this, that? But I managed and came back in 2004 to India. And then I worked in startups again. My work in startups had nothing to do with my MBA, which was in finance and entrepreneurship. But the turning point came in 2017 when I saw that my son is going to do exactly what I did. He's going to do engineering. He's going to not know what engineering is doing, and he's going to do an MBA and going to study, which is not wrong. I don't. The life I got is good. Okay, but I felt that somewhere people like me do engineering just because you want to tell everyone you're an engineer, and then you do something else. So I told my son will not. So it started as a very small project for my son, where I interview some people I know, but people don't give you interviews. They will say they'll be nice to you. No, 1 week, give me 1 week, 1 week. You go to strangers like you tell Sonali, I want your interview. You keep bugging and then you give the interview, right? You're a PhD, you still gave me your interview, right? That was 2 years back. So slowly I started, and by the time I knew it was 1,200. But what I'm trying to say is, the thing is, I'm going to go back. So I realized that I had a lot of potential as an engineer, but I did not leverage that potential. When I look at Geetha, when I look at Shiva, I really admire them because they are in core engineering. You're in semiconductors. You're at least doing AI, forefront of AI. I was working data analytics. The last company I worked for was in machine learning, data RPM. It was a company called Data RPM. We did good work, but I think we spent a lot of time on bugs. We didn't really work on real features. So I realized that our students have a lot of potential, and we really need to. So that's when I decided we need to engineer proper engineers, because my neighboring grandmother, she says civil engineering is a bad field. Don't go for computers. So I get a heart attack. I feel like getting a heart attack when someone says that, because kids learn that. They think civil is bad. The bridge behind the Golden Gate Bridge is civil engineering, right? So my aim is to change that. I want people to say civil has the same place as electronics or computers. So being an MBA, I wanted to do this. This was my vision, basically, of doing it.
Fantastic. I think it is so important for us that whole purpose of doing this today is just to break away the notions that we have, which are nothing but popular notions.
Yes.
Nobody who says that civil is bad or don't do BSc, MSc, it's not from their own experiences, it is from hearsay. And that is where the problem starts. And for people who have gone through the journey and are here today, I still remember when I was doing my PhD, a friend of mine did her civil engineering, and then she went on to do her MS from MIT in finance, with finance as majors, and she completely moved into investment banking. Now, I respect investment bankers, especially if there's somebody in the screen here. But the thing is, it is not about whether you do finance or you do engineering. It is about what motivates you to do what you want. Because ultimately, those 6 years of your study, where you can absorb so much if you're in the right place, goes wasted if you cannot pursue that later on in life. And that's a waste of time and energy, right? So because I mentioned about AI and ML, and everybody wants to do computer science and nobody wants to do civil or even, let's say, non-engineering courses. Geetha, I'll come back to you on that. Like, what do you see? How do you see the roles or careers evolving in the domain of, let's say, computer science, now that AI is almost becoming mainstream? How do you see the roles evolving?
Yeah. I think this is all happening right in front of us and along with us. The journey is happening that way. So if we really look at it, right, we kind of define it as what we called as the gone era, which is plus AI era. That means, we were doing the work, enterprises were doing the work, they did some amount of AI, whatever you're doing, plus AI, right? And I said we are infusing AI. At a personal level, we kind of studied, did some, algorithms, all of that. I think we think that age is over. Now it is AI plus era. Now, what does it mean? The starting point is AI. It comes in two dimensions, right? At a personal level, how much of AI can you leverage in making your job more effective, more creative, more faster, all of that, which means, as we were hearing one another, how quickly can you embrace, adopt, learn, try, fail, bounce back, all of that, but become a new age workforce with AI in your toolkit. And for the enterprises, it's all about how do I build new products with AI plus approach. For example, today, you take supply chain, you take banking, you take energy and utilities, everywhere recommendations are key.
Yeah.
And these recommendations are data driven. And everyone is talking about optimization, doing things better, faster, cheaper, right? And all of this will come from algorithms at the back leveraging data, and AI makes it possible. And AI gives a very, very new, fresh feel and new features to what we develop. So if you look at, to summarize, right, whether you look at it at an individual level or at an organization level, community, even at a global level, I think it's AI plus era.
Yeah.
And
So what I'm thinking,
we can really play a part, but the learning is going to be very key, and making that shift to an AI plus mindset is going to be really, really key.
I mean, what I pick up, thank you, Geetha, for sharing that. What I pick up then for a student who is in high school, let's say, it's not about necessarily becoming an AI specialist, but definitely having the mindset where whenever today it's AI, last time it was big data. So having the mindset to be able to work with technology, because whether we like it or not, tech is not going away. Tech is going to be there everywhere. Whether we want to do arts or music or science or STEM, tech is going to be there. So it is about building that mindset and capability to adapt tech to work what we want to work in. Very interesting. So actually, Dr. Shivananda, this is for you. So I recently read about this government push, right? We are planning to make India a global semiconductor hub. So there's a lot of excitement happening in the semiconductor industry now. And as you said, not many people actually even understand or are aware that there's so much happening in the semiconductor industry. But if we just step back and see that all of electronics is based on semiconductors, right? So you being in the center of all of this, what are some of the careers you think that will gain prominence in the next decade or so for a high school student who is right now thinking of what to follow? And if they were to follow a path saying that I want to be in this industry, I want to be in the semiconductor industry, whether in India or abroad, what suggestions do you have for them to prepare themselves?
So definitely, as you rightly said, I think there is so much buzz around semiconductors right now. Most of the students and most of the parents I talk to, everybody wants their kids or themselves in semiconductor industry right now, without realizing that it's nothing more than electronics, right? Deeper electronics. So I would say as long as you are into core engineering, which is pure science, which includes physics, mathematics, and any of the engineering branches you have, whether it's mechanical, whether it's chemical, whether it's material science, whether it's computer science, whether it's electronics, you can get into semiconductor industry. So I want to make it very clear to people who might be looking at selecting their undergrad courses right now, please do not assume only electronics engineering you will get into semiconductors. You can be a BSc physics, and trust me, the demand for BSc physics will be much, much higher than a computer science engineer in next 5 years. A BSc degree in mathematics will be much more important in the next 5 years. And we need to understand why is this, right? It's not something which I am telling or I'm proposing. Whenever we look at careers, right, we need to look at where is the technology going, where is the market going, and where is the industry going? I think all three are very, very important.
Yeah.
So if you really look at industry right now, you need to look at something we call it in Synopsys as high value problems, HVPs. So we constantly keep talking to our customers, trying to understand what is their problem. Because at the end of the day, if you're not solving a customer problems, you will not be able to even talk to the customers. So my job, every engineer's job in Synopsys, whether you're an engineer, whether you're a VP, whether you're a GM, is to always constantly identify what is a high value problem of a customer. Can we partner with them to solve it? And if you really look at the high value problems today, as we speak, the customers, the first one is there is a huge push in terms of the performance you need from a silicon, right? From a chip.
Yes.
So everybody is moving towards something called as angstrom era. So what I mean by that is the chips are manufactured in a particular factory. So most of the chips are manufactured in TSMC right now, which is in Taiwan. And India is trying to build more and more manufacturing setups, which we call it as fabrication units or fabs. So there is a lot of push from the government and private players to set up fabs in India. And eventually we will definitely have it in India. No two ways about it. So once we have the fabs, which technology node we want to work on? Everybody is moving towards angstrom, which is the 1 nanometer node, which is nothing but the 10 angstrom era. So the gate size is pretty much, we're talking about 10 angstroms right now. We're not even talking about nanometers anymore. So when you do that, it brings in a whole lot of complexities and challenges, right? You are challenging the concepts of light. You are challenging every part of physics you studied in 8th, 9th, 10th. We started looking at and hearing those concepts right now. So that's one of the challenges we have. Second one is, when we want more and more functionality, look at our phones today. We want everything under the sun to be performed on a phone itself right now, right? And when you want to do that, when you add more and more functionality, you're actually adding more and more transistors. When you add more and more transistors, the chips become bigger and bigger. Yeah. But the form factor is constant. So you can't be making a chip bigger and bigger. So what industry is doing? Industry is looking at stacking one chip over the other. So this is called as multi-die integration. So we are trying to stack one chip on top of the other so that we can put in more and more features. Now, when you stack things on top of each other, it has its own challenges. Connectivity issues, signal integrity issues. It's like living in an apartment and dancing on the 7th floor. You can imagine what will happen at the 6th floor, right? Somebody is going to knock and say, shut it off. Same problem you're going to have, signal integrity issues. You have multiple other problems which you have. So multi-die integration is the second problem which you're trying to address. The third one is, usually when you move from one technology node to the other technology node, you used to spend a good 2 years or 2.5 years. Today, people are rushing to move from one to the node, which means you're not matured enough to handle it. Even without maturity, you're moving to the next one because there is a demand in the market. So that's the third problem we have. Fourth one, today, everybody says, why don't you design a chip? For people who do not know the semiconductor industry, I just want to let you know, if you want to design a chip today of yourself, the money you require is around $80 million, one chip. So you can imagine if you make a mistake, it's not like a software where you release a patch and your phone is okay, reboot the system and things are working fine. We call it as right first time to silicon. Very, very important. You cannot afford to make a mistake, which means you need to know the technology, you need to follow the process, you need to follow everything. It's like flying a plane. Doesn't matter how many hours of flying experience you have. Every time the pilot sits in the cockpit, he has to make that 100 checklist which he has in a piece of paper, because one mistake on that particular flight is going to create a crash. So you got to be very, very, very careful. So if you do not have the discipline to manufacture, we're going to be in trouble. So right first time silicon is the fourth problem. And the fifth problem we have is, we call it as 5-9 reliability, which reliability is a function of time. You want the chip to work, with time. Why? Because think about it, right? You're going to send a chip into a rover system, which is actually going in the Mars. So you want that chip to function exactly the same way in function of time. So we call it as 5-9 reliability. What it means is 99.999% of the time, the chip has to work exactly the same way as what's working today, right? These are the 5 big challenges we have. Apart from that, we have productivity issues. We want chips to be done as soon as possible. And then you have geopolitical challenges you have, right? Earlier, you assumed that things are going to come from A, B, C, D. Today, because of the tensions we have, the supply system itself can get
It's
affected.
broken.
So
Yeah.
we are working on. And then you have the Gen AI, which has come in, which is helping us, address the productivity challenges. So if you really look at these problems, I think today's kids who are in high school, I think if they can focus on their fundamental physics, the fundamental mathematics, remember, when you look at any career right now, we need to look at a competency building.
Yes.
When you look at competency, I define it as the knowledge which is required in that vertical, the skills which will be required in that vertical, and the behavior, soft skills which is required in the vertical. Soft skills, today's kids, I think we don't have to worry about it. They acquire it. The only soft skill they will need to acquire is patience. And I think it's fine. They will acquire that. I think knowledge is what they should focus on. So as long as they're strong in mathematics, strong in physics, and do some good projects in internship, I think they're well set for a semiconductor, industry. And when they come to the undergrad, they really have to choose undergrad subjects which they really love to do, right? When you take fundamental maths, fundamental physics, electronics, each one of them has its own challenges. The best thing they can do is talk to seniors, seek out for mentorship and ask for more information in terms of, the best way to find out is talk to someone who's 5 years in this industry, 3 years in this industry, 10 years in this industry, and find out how do they spend the day? What do they do in the year? What do they do in the month? If they do not like what they do, then that career is not for them because they're going to do the same thing, right? Might be a variation of 10, 15%, but end of the day, that is what you will do. Not every job has 100% of the time, 365 days is exciting. There will be a combination of very creative work. There'll be a combination of, routine work. There'll be documentation work. There'll be multiple other things. So you need to understand what each career offers. If that is something which you want to do, then build a portfolio of skills you want to acquire in the next 3 years or 4 years in your undergrad. Start building on it. More internships, more projects, relevant projects. Deep dive into the technology which you're working on, the subjects which you're working on. I think will give them a fantastic career in semiconductor.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shivananda. I mean, that was fascinating because coincidentally, I was also at another talk a few days ago, and we were talking about exactly the same thing, how the importance of fundamental sciences is absolutely necessary to have a career where you can become the expert in any domain. And if I were to summarize what you were saying, some of the things which comes out, things like if you're working in the semiconductor industry, one of the biggest challenges now is like, how do you dissipate heat? And you get to do that from your physics background. Or if you're designing antennas, you have these fractal antennas that every mobile phone uses, that comes from your mathematics. If you're going to work for, let's say, again, going back to AI, there is so much of heat that is generated to do the computations, which we are ignoring because of the excitement of AI right now. How do you challenge? And that has a direct implication on global warming because that's going to come up very, very soon. Putting the servers in the transatlantic, below the sea is not going to work for us because the entire marine ecosystem is heating up because of these huge servers that Google has put underneath, or IBM, or whoever for that matter. So I think everything is becoming so interrelated. And that brings me to you, Shyam, actually, because when you are working with so many students, you counsel a lot of students, right? And you end up getting, as you said, people will come and say, we want to do this engineering versus that engineering. What is your point of view when you have to answer to a child who says, no, I don't want to do, I only want to do computer science because that's what is going to get me money tomorrow. So how do you tackle that question? And what would you tell them?
See, I tell them that every career choice is a combination of foundational subjects and application based subjects. You can always learn an application. One thing I tell all parents, all students from 8th to 12th, never take computers as an elective because computers can be learned anytime. Many students who are good in arts end up taking computers because their parents tell them and they mess up coding. But I tell them it's not because you're bad at coding. At that age, everyone's going to be bad. So the point is take sculpting if you like it, take physical education if you like it, take drawing, engineering drawing. That's what ICC offers in 8th. Many students didn't even realize everyone wants to go for computer. So to my son, if I were to tell him, I will tell him that you have to take a foundation, like Mr. Shiva said, maths or physics or chemistry. If you're taking science, you can focus on one foundational subject. Don't even do engineering. If you do chemistry, for example, if you do physics, physics is like the mother of science, right? It can branch off into mechanical, or it can branch off into metallurgy, or electronics, device physics, for example, medical physics, radio physics. So I tell people, if you can choose whatever engineering you want to choose, then do physics. Why do you want to, at the age of 17, I tell, how mature will you be to choose mechanical over electronic? I was not, right? So how can I expect my son to choose mechanical over electronics? But if he selects physics, by the third year, at the age of 21, he can now say, you know what, I like device physics, or I like medical physics. So now he can do a MTech and in GATE, and he can actually go into something related to medicine. So that is a smarter way, right? So what it tells students is, you're not, the problem is the system, but of course we have a system and we have to crack it, right?
Yes.
So the best way to crack it is, don't get enamored with your neighbor's son or daughter who's going to IIT or BITS. Be confident as a parent. If you are confident as a parent, you can tell them, you take whatever you want, but make sure it's a foundation. Take maths. If you're good in maths, take maths, because maths has applications just like physics, in crypto, cryptology, in data science, in
Yes.
machine learning, in artificial intelligence,
Yes.
supply chain management, optimization, so many things. Similarly, physics, similarly, chemistry, they're all subjects which you can divert anything, right? They're roots. From roots, you have many branches. So I would tell my son, I would love it if you like maths, take maths. By the way, he likes physics more. So though he's good in maths, he likes physics better. So I said, take physics, because he's not preparing for JEE mains. He's preparing, but he's not going for classes. So most probably he will take physics or chemistry for bachelor's, which I'm absolutely thrilled about. This is what I would tell students. And this, what I tell parents, before I counsel you, I want you to know, I am the parent of a 11th standard student who's studying in ICSE, who's my son doesn't go to tuition. So don't think I am telling you something and I am doing something. You can check and he see that he will not get into IIT. He will most probably not even do BTech.
No, I love that conviction. I think as I said, I was discussing, and a report I was reading actually a couple of days ago. The maximum demand in US right now, in the evolution of AI coming into picture, is actually mathematics graduates.
Exactly.
They are the most in demand. They're getting paid, because most of the concern of parents is, will my son get paid? Will my daughter get paid if they don't do computer science? And unfortunately, we are actually, all of us are living like a frog in a well in Bangalore, especially. So go
No,
out,
you know
talk
what
to
parents are
people.
doing? They're doing a BTech in AI. One parent came and
I was
told me,
coming to that. So that
do a BTech
question,
in AI,
yeah.
do in mathematics.
So
They
that
don't
question,
understand that.
yeah, I was going to address that question to Geetha. Actually, that's the elephant in the room, right? So many students come to me and say, we want to jump straight into AI after school. And there's this lot of debate, right? Will AI become commodified, or is it just the beginning? I mean, I think it's both of them, right? So what's your take on this? Because if someone comes to me it looks like, if you want a strong foundation, you have to have it as broad as possible rather than as narrow as possible. And after 12th is just the foundation. So what's your take on this? Do you see AI getting commodified, or do you still see somebody who is wanting to take this as a career option, let's say in the next 5 years' time, they are at the cusp of high school? What is your advice to them?
Yeah. See, there is always opinions and experience, right? And, early in my school days, something that I still cherish till today is, doing those little projects. For example, when I was in eighth, I had a chance to, and I just loved building. I even love building today. So using broomstick, I had built a small house. It had
Nice.
two decks, right? The small one, and it had the slanting roof and a double-decker house. Nice compound. That was experiment ground for me to put these grains, see them sprout, all of that. Now, from there, as I did my diploma, again, one of the most cherishing moment is my project there. And that was a project where we replaced a control panel for a fine blanking press in a mechanical field where, I probably was the only girl on the shop floor replacing this, but it kind of brought mechanical, electronics, and programming together, right? And as I start delving into real projects that we do for customers, most of what we learn, I've realized, is through projects. you may be studying a lot, right? For example,
Yeah.
recently I went back to 12th math and I learned about solving simultaneous linear equations.
Linear equation.
That's only I realized what is the importance of it, because we were trying to apply optimization logic for some of what we were building.
Right.
Now, how much of our theory we do, there are places in projects where your heart tells, I like it. I love it. It'll wake me up. I don't mind
Yes.
waking up early if I do it. I want to do more. I want to learn more.
Yes.
I think when we did that, right, we just went with the flow and chose what came our way. But now the choice is in your hands. You can start doing projects early on. So I know now high school children
People are doing, yes. Yes.
So one of the little thing that I did with my son, who is an 8th grader now, is we just took a leaf. And we did a simple thing as, he was learning all this Cartesian geometry, shapes and all that. We just did the measurement, and in Excel, we created a formula for creating a leaf.
Wonderful.
And we got an equation out of it. So he kind of got the gist of it. He's not so bent on maths. I'm okay with it. But it also kind of gave me a feel to, what is
why is he learning what he's learning?
And, all of that. So I think it's a great moment to realize your strength and, passion through little projects. It could be 4-week project, 2-week project, some problem that you solve, because it also kind of realize your strengths in terms of communication, collaboration, all of that. So
Wonderful.
In terms of coming back to, realizing that passion and strength, I strongly believe projects is a way to go.
Fantastic. I think I couldn't agree more with you on this. Most of the learning that happens is actually if a student can understand why they are learning and relate it, then I think half the problem is solved. And the next half is if they find it interesting. And everything falls in place after that, right? So I think we're coming to the end of this, and I see a few themes or keywords that kept on getting repeated as we went along. One is networking and peers. So be careful. It is very good, and it's never too early to start having peers who have similar interests. Form a club. It could be an after-school club. It could be in your school, but be with peers who share your interests and also who push you to go do even better. That could be in the form of the college you choose. That could be in the form of friends you make or university that you choose, right? The second is mentorship. We didn't have time to dwell on that, but I think mentorship is so paramount in today's age and time, where people with the experience can help a student realize their potential and interest. Because many a times, I think parents are so close to the problems. I shouldn't just call it a problem statement, but they're so close to the child that they are not able to step back and see what is good for them. I mean, I am a parent. I make that mistake at times as well. And I'm sure many of us will relate to that. So mentorship, of course, it can be your parents, but preferably having a mentor who understands the field and the interest of the student, I think is so important for the child to realize what their life's ambition or life journey could be. And the third, which I've learned, is continue to learn. Always be open to ideas. Don't focus on what is happening all around you. It's difficult, but it's doable. And that again goes back to the whole idea of having mentors who can tell you, tune out of the noise around you and build a strong foundation in the core subjects, which then can lead you to something where you want to become an expert in. So if one last question to all of you, I know we have overshot a little bit, but I hope we have another 1 or 2 minutes. So if there was one advice that you could give to a high school student at this time to have a successful career in STEM, what would that be? So let me start with, would you like to share that?
Yeah, definitely. So I have a very different take on the whole topic which you just talked about. So I personally feel, I talk to many high school students, I talk to many parents, but one thing I want to tell all the parents here, if they're listening, if your child comes to you in 10th standard and tells, I don't know what to do, please accept that statement. It's perfectly fine. If a child comes at 12th, who's very good in maths and physics and computer science, comes and tells you, I don't want to do engineering, don't try to force engineering on that person, because today their opportunities is way beyond our thinking also. And when my friends, my juniors at 40 cannot figure out life, cannot figure out career, how can you expect an 18-year-old to chart out the plan for the next 30 years? It's not going to happen. So I think we need to accept that these kids will find their own path. They will create a career. See, remember, we didn't have prompt engineers a year back. We didn't have Insta influencers a year back. We have Insta influencers who are doing marketing, earning in crores today, right?
Yes.
That there is a career around everything they want to do. I had a child who came and said, I want to do undergrad in something which I like, arts and chemistry. Can you find out something? I didn't know at that time. I had to do a lot of search and found out that there is a university in UK which actually does a major in chemistry and minor in arts because they need museum curators, right? So if you think about it, there is a career for everything. You like music, you like physics, there is a career for it. You like English, you like computer science, there is a career for it. So first thing I want to tell all the students, please do not get into this playbook of how to build a successful career because nobody knows what your career is. I think you're going to define it. The opportunities you guys have is much, much, much more than what we had. We were also very lucky. No two ways about it. We were luckier than the previous generation. You are much luckier than us. I think you just have to follow what you really want to do. And after 20 years, you want to quit what you're doing, you want to start something else, be my guest, do it. But I think the only thing which you need to be doing all the time, according to me, is if you're a science student, if you're a STEM student, be curious, be relevant. I think that's more important. You need to keep an eye on what's happening around you and be relevant all the time. And as you rightly said, learn to learn. I think these three things, if you have it, you will have a fantastic career in STEM. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much. Learn to learn. I love that statement. Learn to learn, learnability. There is nothing beyond that, right? Okay, so Shyam, would you like to share one advice?
Yeah. I want to give a very practical advice. Parents spend so much time sending their kids to coaching classes and all that, right? But instead of that, reading the newspaper, according to me, is the biggest source of a career. Nowadays, when I make my son read the newspaper, I see at least 10 careers every day. There was an article on wind energy and Tamil Nadu trade in Gujarat in wind energy. And there was an article about ISRO sending its latest generation geostationary weather satellite. So my son was asking, what is a geostationary? We talk about curiosity. We say, if you want to be a scientist, you be curious. But I can't go and tell a parent, you be curious, right? Curious is a very vague word. But once you start reading, you get information that becomes knowledge. Now you start asking, okay, what is geostationary? No, it orbits around the earth at the same position. No, satellites do that, but why weather? They monitor weather. So slowly they start building their interest, right? So I saw at least 7 different subjects with 7 careers. Second thing the paper does is allows you to correlate a subject you learn at school with a career. Biology, there was an article about lung cells around lungs developing immunity. It's on biology. So slowly you start cultivating instead of putting them all, because what happens is once you clear IIT, what next? They don't know. They all spend so much time clearing IIT, but then they get stuck. Then they start thinking, instead of that, make your child go through this so that by the time they reach 12th, they know I don't care where I go, but I want to do wind energy or I want to focus on something. So read papers, read because all the people I interviewed, at least 60%, read some magazine, read some book, read some paper where they got to know about a career. So my biggest advice to them is practically make your kid read from various sources so they will get to know what careers are relevant. Because semiconductors, for example, there was a big article in India saying India has water problem. Semiconductor needs ultra pure water, which is million times purer than what we drink. So how will it? There were questions. So a student will ask this question. So in India, we have so much problem with water. How can we develop a fabrication unit, right? So these kind of questions build your curiosity. That's what I tell students. I should.
Wonderful, wonderful. I think we are just coming back. The highlights are still the same. Like, be relevant, keep learning, be curious. So Geetha, would you like to, have we missed anything? Would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's covered well. If at all I would add, I would say identify those sparks, and those sparks can be different in different times in your journey. Because one of the advice that I got from my mentor is every 6 months, take an open sheet and see if you're enjoying what you're doing, right? It is not that you would continue to enjoy the same thing every time, and that's okay. Today it may be particular area and tomorrow it can be something else. But the beauty is when you understand the spark that wakes you up tomorrow, and then you have the joy of learning. And at any time, like as Shivananda said, what we know will be just handful, right? What we don't know will be the entire world. There is no need to, have the quest of learning that entire world, but to identify that spark that will give you joy for, at least 6 months in terms of learning, applying, and knowing.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much. I mean, I did not want to touch upon the coaching menace because I think that will need a much longer time period. So we'll not go in there, but with what we have, I think that kind of sums it up very nicely. Every challenge is an opportunity for innovation and figuring out what you love, right? And as we conclude today's enlightening session, I think the future of STEM is very diverse. And there are so many opportunities. Gone are the days when you had to do physics and you could not take music with it, or you had to do material science and you could not think of arts along with it. So with that, I would like to conclude today's session with something that Einstein said. I read it and I loved it. Education is not the learning of facts, but the training of the mind to think. So thank you very much, Shyam, Geetha, and Shivananda for sharing your valuable insights today. So thank you everyone for this fascinating Saturday evening.